Tonight, the Menendez brothers sure seem like they could soon be released from prison for the murder of their parents. How their family's plea this week to the DA could have actually moved the needle. Plus, we look back at the brothers' testimony, but did you even know that there were 2 trials? Each brother had his own jury in the first trial, and each hung with no verdict. But only one jury in the second. We examine what the difference was that led to a conviction. And now, in retrospect, was that fair? And we'll speak to one of the jurors from that second trial, his first TV interview since all of this news broke. He voted to convict. What does he think of the possibility of Lyle and Erik going free after all these years? But first, Erik and Lyle Menendez were convicted and sentenced to life for murdering their parents in 1989. It starts to feel like these convicted first-degree murderers could walk free, possibly by the end of the year. Why? Because it also seems clearer than ever that they were likely sexually abused by their father, including some new evidence. That doesn't mean they didn't do it, but it does mean they could have, maybe should have, gotten a much shorter sentence. And with 2 new Netflix shows about the case, pressure's been mounting on LA DA George Gascon, including from the victims' own families. He's now announced this week he'll decide within days whether to recommend resentencing for the brothers, and it now seems likely he'll recommend they be set free. Now, a judge would still have to agree. Tonight, the hour looking back and forward at the case in the wake of all of these developments this week. First, here's our Laura Ingle with the latest twists and turns, a look back at this week's news and how we got here.
I never thought this day would come. I stand here today with a heavy heart and also with hope.
35 years after her sister and her sister's husband were brutally slain in their Beverly Hills home, Joan Vandermolen is begging for the release of their killers, her nephews, Lyle and Erik Menendez. It is the latest twist in a decades-old saga now reaching a boiling point. The Menendez brothers have long maintained they were driven to kill by their father's sexual abuse and their mother's complicity. A defense at the time widely mocked by many in the media, and which a jury roundly rejected, but one their family believes could finally free them.
For many years, I struggled with terms with what happened to my sister's family. It was a nightmare none of us could have imagined. But as details of Lyle and Erik's abuse came to light, it became clear that their actions, while tragic, were the desperate response of 2 boys trying to survive the unspeakable cruelty of their father. As their aunt, I had no idea of the extent of the abuse they suffered at the hands of my brother-in-law. None of us did. But looking back, I can see the fear and tension that their father had instilled on them. They were just children who could have been protected and were instead brutalized in the most horrific ways.
Hours after Vandermolen's impassioned plea at a press conference attended by dozens of other Menendez family members, the Los Angeles District Attorney announcing he will make a decision on whether to recommend resentencing the brothers by the end of this month, which, if a judge agrees, could lead to Erik and Lyle seeing daylight outside a prison's walls for the first time since their arrest in 1990. Yet there is one family member who is urging the DA to keep the brothers locked away. Kitty Menendez's brother, Milton Anderson.
And Mr. Anderson firmly believes that Jose had not molested either of the boys, and he believes, based on the evidence again, that it was only when they learned, Erik and Lyle learned, that their father was going to take them out of the will. Erik and Lyle went to purchase shotguns.
That is what a jury believed in March of 1996 when they sensationally rejected the brothers' abuse claims and locked Erik and Lyle away for life without the possibility of parole for the murders of their parents. And that would have been where this story ended. If not for a twist neither Hollywood nor the rabid tabloid media of the 90s could have ever predicted. The Menendez brothers would rocket into the social media age as TikTok stars, with a fan following among a younger generation, armed with a new understanding of sexual assault and abuse, new language to talk about, and a willingness to reckon with perceived injustices from the past.
The world has changed, it's evolved. People have come to the realization that men can be victims as well.
Shame on the reporters who are older generations and just think that the Menendez brothers case is just something sensational. No. Future generations or past generations and our older generations, you need to stop the dysfunction of what you are causing of a rape culture in our society.
I do not think that Erik and Lyle deserve to spend the rest of their life in prison at all. We also know a lot more now about what happens in the music industry and in the film industry and what people with money and power do. So now it's not so unfathomable that a man like this would do something to his sons. But back then they were ridiculed and called liars.
As social media momentum grows, new evidence suddenly emerges. On May 2nd of last year, explosive allegations from former Menudo boy band member Roy Rosello, claiming Jose Menendez drugged and raped him when he was just 14 years old and signed to RCA Records. Rosello speaking out in a documentary on Peacock.
I know what he did to me in his house. That's the man here that raped me. This guy, that's the pedophile.
How old were you there?
14 years old.
And on May 23, 2023, an attorney for the Menendez brothers filing a new petition asking a judge to vacate Erik and Lyle's convictions. Revealed in those court documents, a handwritten letter from Erik Menendez to his cousin Andy dated about 8 months before the murders, alluding to abuse by his father. It reads in part, "I've been trying to avoid Dad. It's still happening, Andy, but it's worse for me now. Every night I stay up thinking he might come in. I'm afraid. He's crazy. He's warned me 100 times about telling anyone, especially Lyle." Yet it's not until October 3rd of this year, with Los Angeles District Attorney George Gascon locked in a tight re-election race, and as interest and public pressure on the case crests with not one but 2 Netflix series, that the DA announces a full review of Erik and Lyle's murder convictions, including potential resentencing.
None of this information has been confirmed. We are not, at this point, ready to say that we either believe or do not believe that information. But we're here to tell you that we have a moral and an ethical obligation to review what is being presented to us.
And now members of the Menendez family who stood by the brothers since their arrest are once again hopeful, seizing the moment where it appears that public opinion, politics, and possible new evidence will change the course of fate.
The truth is, Lyle and Erik were failed by the very people who should have protected them, by their parents, by the system, by society at large. When they stood trial, the whole world was not ready to believe boys could be raped, or that young men could be victims of sexual violence. Today we know better. We know that abuse has long-lasting effects, and victims of trauma sometimes act in ways that are very difficult to understand.
Indeed, the world is a much different place than it was 35 years ago, when Erik and Lyle Menendez were once golden boys of 1980s Beverly Hills. With the mansion, the money, and together with their parents, seemingly the perfect family, living a life of privilege, thanks to multimillionaire father Jose Menendez, a wildly successful RCA Records exec, and his glamorous, devoted wife, Kitty. With no outward sign that something sinister was brewing behind that wrought iron gate and those perfectly trimmed hedges, a saga of abuse, rage, and dark family secrets still unraveling so many years later. The brothers speaking out together for the first time in years in a recent Netflix documentary, The Menendez Brothers.
Everyone asks why we kill their parents. Maybe now people can understand the truth. My name is Erik Menendez. My name is Lyle Menendez, calling you from Donovan Correctional Facility. Lyle was the only person that had ever protected me. What happened that night is very well known, but so much hasn't been told.
It was the night of August 20th, 1989, when Lyle, then 21, called 911, sobbing to the dispatcher that someone had killed his parents. The eviscerated bodies of Jose and Kitty Menendez lie nearby, both ripped apart by shotgun blasts delivered at close range.
Beverly Hills emergency?
Yes, police.
What's the problem? What's the problem? What's the problem?
Someone killed my parents.
Pardon me?
Someone killed my parents.
What? Who? Are they still there?
Yes.
The people...
No.
Were they shot? Were they shot?
Yes.
They were shot?
Yes.
Police arrived to a grisly scene. Blood and brain matter. Kitty had been shot trying to crawl away. The brothers are hysterical, crying, and are not initially treated as suspects by authorities.
I told the detectives that I saw smoke, which would have been impossible if I didn't do it. It's pretty incredible we were not arrested that night.
Yet the police were watching as the brothers began spending their murdered parents' money days after their killings on Rolex watches, a Porsche, designer clothing, high-end cars, an elite tennis coach, real estate, and even a restaurant. A $1 million shopping spree in the span of 6 months. Bizarre behavior, and for prosecutors, it was all building a motive.
What they wanted was their lifestyle. They wanted freedom, and they wanted to be free from the idea that their father would somehow disinherit them.
3 days later, Erik, now a jet-setting pro tennis player funded with money from his parents' estate, turns himself in at LAX. In the following 2 years, prosecutors and defense attorneys are locked in a legal battle over whether the brothers' confidential therapy sessions can be used at trial. In August of 1992, the California Supreme Court ruling 2 of the tapes are admissible. The first trial begins on July 20th, 1993. The brothers are tried together, but with separate juries for each, both Lyle and Erik testifying in court. And from the stand, they paint a graphic and horrific story of sexual abuse perpetrated at times by both parents, beginning in childhood, and of a domineering father who ruled and abused through force, even death threats, leaving Lyle and Erik, in their words, trapped with no way out and in fear for their lives.
He raped me.
Did you cry?
Yes.
Did you bleed?
Yes.
Were you scared?
Very.
Did you ask him not to?
Yes.
How did you ask him not to?
I just told him, I don't.
Was it you telling Lyle about something that was happening?
My dad.
Okay.
My dad.
Your Honor, can I ask a leading question?
My dad had been molesting me.
And did you want something from your brother? Is that why you told him?
I wanted it to stop.
The brother's cousin, Andy Cano, testifies that years before the murders, Erik told him of the abuse.
Did Erik begin a conversation with you?
Yes.
And do you recall how the conversation began?
Well, yes, I do.
Okay, would you tell us how it began?
He asked me if my dad ever gave me massages. Well, he told me his father was massaging his dick.
He used that word?
Yes, he did. At that point, we were both trying to figure out whether what was happening to him was normal. He wanted to know that if this happened to every kid with a father and son relationship.
Prosecutors suggest Cano was lying. It will be years later, and only after Cano's untimely death, that the letter Erik wrote to him about the abuse will be discovered. The Menendez trial is the first time the abuse defense is used in a murder trial, and prosecutors aggressively push back.
And it's the people's position that the sexual abuse is here to make the parents look so bad that you don't care that they're dead.
But jurors are deadlocked, and on January 13, 1994, Erik's case ends in mistrial. Weeks later, so does Lyle's, with jurors unable to agree on whether to find either brother guilty of first or second-degree murder or lesser charges of manslaughter. At the crux of the disagreement, the jury split on just how bad the abuse was and whether any of it justified two young men killing their mother and father, brutally and seemingly without remorse.
Do you feel this is a victory for you?
No, I've already expressed my views on that point. A victory is when my client is free.
We are going to be trying the case a second time. Some cases take more than one opportunity, and I am pleased that at least we have that second opportunity. Had they come back with voluntary manslaughter, you would have seen an entirely different reaction from me because I would have been utterly disappointed.
Are you going to pursue the death penalty again?
I have every intention of going forward with the death penalty, yes.
Prosecutors wasting little time, and on October 11, 1995, a retrial is underway. This one a stark contrast to the dramatic scenes that played out to a nationally televised audience in the first trial. No cameras, no more weeping defendants, or near constant stream of shocking family secrets pouring from the witness stand. A new judge now vastly whittling down the ability of the defense to introduce key evidence of alleged abuse. This second time around, the defense would call far fewer witnesses, and only one brother, Erik, would testify. Prosecutors, too, taking a different tack, labeling the abuse defense as the abuse excuse, and attacking the brothers' claims as outright lies. The decision in front of the jury now whittled down to either first-degree murder or acquittal. Manslaughter no longer on the table.
Do you think he could do it? Do you think an actor, a professional actor, in 3.5 years, with only one script to study and one purpose in his life, could get ready and act? Well, this defendant is more motivated than any Academy Award seeker because he's motivated by things outside of praise or money or promise. This defendant is fighting for his life. Now, if he was willing to lie and lie and lie to everybody in town, why, in God's name, should you listen to anything he has to say?
They had a joint style and a joint philosophy of child rearing. And that style and philosophy was that their children were not human beings to treasure and to love and to support and to appreciate for who they are, but they were objects to use for their own purposes. Their purposes of sexual pleasure, of sadistic pleasure, they loved to frighten them, together, to vent their frustration and anger on.
And on March 20th, 1996, it took jurors just 16 hours of deliberation to convict.
I remember when the verdict came down, it was first degree. And first degree meant spending the rest of my life in prison for the next 50, 60 years. It was so daunting that I was in shock.
Just before the brothers are sent to prison from county jail to begin serving life without parole, they sit down with Barbara Walters in an interview the brothers now call unusual.
I'm just a normal kid.
Oh, Eric, you're a normal kid who killed your parents.
Yeah, I know.
And you still say you're a normal kid?
Well, I didn't have normal experiences, but I am.
Erik and Lyle would be separated for the next 22 years, but the case would simmer on. Fascination around it would linger, and their family would not give up the fight. Another twist of fate may be just around the corner.
No jury today would issue such a harsh sentence without taking their trauma into account. Lyle and Erik have already paid a heavy price, discarded by a system that failed to recognize their pain. It's time to give them the opportunity to live the rest of their lives free from the shadow of their past.
Thank you to Laura Ingle for that. Still ahead, the Menendez brothers in their own words. The testimony from Lyle and Erik Menendez from their first murder trial in 1993. It's emotional, it's dramatic. One of the first big televised trials. We got the highlights of what they said. But remember, it was the outcome of the second trial that sent the Menendez brothers away for life without parole. It was a completely different trial. No camera, far fewer family secrets pouring from the witness stand. We'll talk to one of the jurors who voted to convict from that second trial coming up. The Menendez brothers went on trial for first-degree murder in July of 1993. It was one of the first big televised trials, millions glued to their screens. Both brothers opted to take the stand in their own defense. They admitted to fatally shooting their parents with shotguns, but argued that they acted out of self-defense, fearing for their lives after years of psychological, emotional, and sexual abuse. It was Lyle, the older brother, 25 at the time, would take the stand first, and under direct examination, admitted that, yes, he did kill his parents.
Did you love your mom and dad?
Yes.
And on August 20th, 1989, did you and your brother kill your mother and father?
Yes.
Did you kill them for money? Is that no?
No.
Did you kill them because you wanted to pay them back for the way they had treated you?
No.
Why did you kill your parents?
Because we were afraid.
Lyle Menendez then detailed the alleged sexual abuse, which he said began before he was 7 years old.
It just started with, after sports practices, he would massage me. And we would have these talks, and he would show me, and he would fondle me, and he would ask me to do the same with him, and I would touch him, and we would undress.
Where would this take place?
In my bedroom.
And how did it change?
Just became more involved.
What do you mean more involved?
We would be in the bathroom, and he would put me on my knees, and he would guide me, all my movements, and I would have oral sex with him.
Did you want to do this?
Lyle would also be cross-examined, challenged on much of his account, saying that it was after confronting his father about the sexual abuse of his brother Erik that they felt their father would kill them, so they acted first.
Would it be your testimony, Mr. Menendez, that after you came into the room, through the doors here, on the left part of Exhibit 20, you started firing at your father, who was in the area right here where his body was later found, correct?
Right.
And then what did you do next?
I just kept firing.
When you put the gun up against the back of his head and you pulled the trigger, did you go around behind the sofa to do that?
Well, I didn't put it up against his head on purpose.
When you went in the area behind the sofa and you unintentionally put the gun against your father's head and pulled the trigger, where was your mother?
Objection, state the testimony now.
She was, my memory is not good on this, but I think I remember her. Seemed to be around the side of the coffee table.
What was she doing?
In my mind, she was just sort of sneaking around the side of the coffee table and going in that direction.
You said your mother was sneaking? Is that correct? You just used that term, sneaking. Is that correct?
Yes.
And did you think that she was going to do something sneaky to you when she was crawling behind the coffee table?
No, I thought that we were in danger still.
And this is after you'd shot your father in the head, correct?
Right.
Then Erik Menendez took the stand, and under direct examination by his attorney, the then 22-year-old described the physical abuse he said he endured from his father, Jose.
Had he hit you before in your life?
Yes.
Had he done other physical things that hurt you when angry?
Yes.
What kind of thing? What was the thing he most typically did when he was angry?
Most typically he slapped me.
And what about pushing your body into objects? Would he do that?
Yeah, he'd throw me a lot.
Throw you a lot?
Yes, he'd throw me into the wall or into the bed or into the desk or into the glass or any place.
He once threw you into a glass door, didn't he?
Yes.
Broke the door?
Shattered the glass.
And then threw you again?
Yeah.
And just as Lyle did, Erik described in graphic detail years of sexual abuse at the hands of his father. But he also explained how his father, Jose, rationalized it to his son.
Almost all the times with the sex, I would say to myself, I'm not going to let this happen. I'm going to stop it. As soon as he comes into my room, I'm going to fight him. I'm going to jump on him. I imagine myself on a ledge, jumping down on him, all kinds of things to stop the sex. And whenever he came into the room, I just crumbled, and I couldn't do it. He said it was something that was supposed to happen, and he often referred to ancient times in the Romans and the Greeks and how they used to have sex before battle and talk about how this was natural and this was supposed to happen.
Mr. Menendez, you've heard the testimony of your brother that you and he killed your parents on August 20th, 1989. Did you not?
Yes, we did.
And what do you believe was the originating cause of you and your brother ultimately winding up shooting your parents?
Me telling.
You telling what?
Me telling Lyle that,
You telling Lyle what? Was it you telling Lyle about something that was happening?
My dad.
Okay.
My dad had been molesting me.
And did you want something from your brother? Is that why you told him?
I wanted it to stop.
Were you seeking help from your brother?
Yes.
Erik also testified that he told his father about that conversation with his brother about the abuse.
He was saying that he had told me never to tell Lyle and that he had warned me not to do that, and now he said that Lyle was going to tell everyone and that it was my fault, and now Lyle was going to tell everyone and he was not going to let that happen.
He was not going to let what happen?
He said he wasn't going to let Lyle tell. Well, he didn't say he wasn't going to let Lyle anyone. He just said he wasn't going to let that happen. Lyle telling anyone.
Now, you say he said he told you in the past what?
Well, he had told me never, ever to tell anyone.
And did he ever tell you what the consequence would be of telling anyone?
He would kill me.
But even if the jury believed everything about the abuse from his father, what he described as the complicity by his mother, how was it still self-defense to kill them?
I went into the room, the gun went off, and there was fire, there was smoke, and it was so chaotic that I just didn't, I don't have a great memory of it.
Now, you entered the room first, correct?
Yes.
Now, you say the gun went off. Did you fire that gun?
No, I fired the gun.
Now, you shot until your gun was no longer loaded, correct?
I shot everything I had.
And then, what did you hear or see after you had finished firing all of your ammunition?
I heard a noise coming from what was my mom.
Would you describe for the jury what sound you heard? How would you characterize that sound?
Overall. I guess I would characterize it as a moaning simply because she was dying, and that's what freaked me out, and I just wanted to get away. But I can't remember how it was or the way it was.
Was your mother crying?
No, it wasn't a crying sound.
You indicated that your father said no as you entered and started to shoot?
Yes.
Did your mother ever say anything?
No, she never said a word.
She didn't have a chance to say anything?
I guess not.
Up next, that was all from the first trial, where there were hung juries. It was the second trial that sealed their fate. Menendez brothers were convicted in the second trial of first-degree murder, but the differences between the first and second trial were major, and there are now questions about that. Coming up. So much of the coverage of the Menendez brothers case is centered around the first trial, most likely due to the fact that there was a camera in the courtroom and the emotional nature of the brothers' testimony. The second trial seems to be, I don't know, much less understood or often forgotten, despite that being the trial that ultimately sealed the brothers' fates. It took place 2.5 years after the two hung jury verdicts in the first case. Now, I covered the second trial, and that one was different from the first. For starters, camera, which led to much of the public interest in the first place, no longer allowed in the courtroom. And though this second trial had the same judge, Judge Stanley Weisberg, his instructions surrounding the case were different this time around. The second trial, single jury, rather than one for each brother, where in the first case they had 4 different charges to consider: first-degree murder, second-degree murder, voluntary manslaughter, involuntary manslaughter. This time around, it was just first-degree murder or nothing for the killing of the mother, Kitty. They could consider manslaughter for the father. The number of witnesses allowed to testify for the brothers also dropped to 64 as opposed to 101 that testified in the first, but limited in what they could testify to surrounding any alleged abuse that may have taken place. Lyle Menendez even chose not to testify. So it obviously seems that these changes affected the outcome, but I still got a lot of questions. Let's bring them to Jesse Weber, attorney anchor for the Law and Crime Network, NewsNation legal contributor. He's been studying the transcripts, the history of the case, following these cases closely. Jesse, good to see you.
Good to see you.
All right, so how would you characterize the biggest differences between the cases? Meaning, the option for manslaughter seems like it was a huge thing in the first case, but in the second case, they still could consider manslaughter for Jose Menendez, but rejected it?
So the brothers had a very big advantage in the first trial. They could argue imperfect self-defense.
What is that?
That is saying we have a genuine, honest, yet unreasonable belief that our life is in imminent danger. And they could put on a lot of evidence to support that. The judge, though, sided with the prosecution the second time around. The prosecution said, and the judge agreed, even if you assume the brothers were abused, okay, where was the imminent danger? Right? The idea that at that moment, they weren't in fear of their lives. They might have had a general fear of their parents, but these parents were unarmed. They were watching television. The brothers went to get the guns in San Diego, came back, loaded it. So you can't argue imperfect self-defense. When it came to Kitty, they really didn't have much of a defense. In fact, Lyle seemed to rely a lot on Eric's witnesses because, as you mentioned, Lyle didn't testify. And because he didn't testify, he didn't lay a foundation for a lot of experts and witnesses to come in. He couldn't testify. He didn't testify about his state of mind, so he couldn't argue I was abused or this happened. And so he was relying a lot on Eric's testimony and Eric's witnesses. And even to this day, I can't tell you exactly what Lyle's defense was. It was putting blame on Kitty, that she didn't do enough to protect them. Now, the brothers could argue that they killed their father in heat of passion, which is a type of manslaughter, but they couldn't argue self-defense. I think that was a big difference.
But did they argue heat of passion?
They did, so it was limited, right? And there's a misconception. People have this idea that the brothers were railroaded in the second case. They couldn't introduce any evidence of abuse. Not true. While Lyle couldn't introduce evidence of that he was abused as a child, and the judge said a lot of this evidence is too cumulative, it's irrelevant. Eric testified for about 7 days about being abused. 2 doctors testified about him having PTSD and anxiety. Multiple family members talked about verbal, sexual, physical abuse that they witnessed. And even witnesses testified that when Jose would take one of the brothers to the bedroom, they weren't allowed to come in there. This second jury heard that. And so as we talk today about what evidence, maybe if that second jury heard, I'm still not convinced personally that would have changed their mind that this wasn't murder. But clearly, the defense, they were able to present a defense, and it was Lyle's option to not take the stand. I can't say it's the worst idea. He would have probably had some trouble because he made statements after the first trial that he would have been cross-examined on, but they were able to present a defense.
And this is Judge Weisberg's ruling on that. It's really irrelevant, and it would be totally irrelevant to any trial if the defendants had been abused or if they fit a particular diagnosis of being abused. That's totally irrelevant unless it corroborates their testimony as to their mental state at the time of the crime. If it doesn't do that, then the fact they happen to be abused or happen to fit a particular diagnosis is irrelevant.
Right, because it was all about the state of mind at the time of the crime, and that's why he actually chose not to introduce a lot of evidence about what happened to them as boys. It more had to be related to what was happening at the time, and that makes sense. And by the way, if you don't believe me, believe every other court that heard this argument, including the Ninth Circuit in 2005. They heard all these arguments that from the defense, this wasn't fair, it was totally unfair, their rights were violated. Every court agreed that Judge Weisberg made the right decision.
The prosecutor did ridicule, though, the brothers' claim of abuse at the time. This is the silliest, most ridiculous story ever told in the courtroom.
And the brothers said that was prejudicial, wasn't fair. But at the end of the day, again, even that issue was brought up to the higher court, and they agreed.
Well, here's the good news is, coming up, we're going to talk to one of the jurors from that case where they convicted. Jesse, thank you.
You got it.
Appreciate it. Still ahead, 16 hours of deliberations. The jury convicted the Menendez brothers of first-degree murder. They got life without parole. And as I just said, one of the jurors who came to that decision joins us next. Does he believe the outcome would have been different today? Does he have regrets? Does he have doubts? Does he think they should be free? I'll ask him. So we just went through how different the 2 Menendez trials were. In the second trial, much of the defense's case was gutted, denying the witnesses and some of the sexual abuse evidence. And unlike in the first trial, the second ended in guilty verdicts for first-degree murder. Joining me now is one of the jurors from that second trial, Andrew Wolfberg. Thanks so much for joining us. Really appreciate it. All right, so let me just start big picture. Based on everything you've seen in the case recently, do you think that they should be freed?
Well, that's not my role as a former juror. When my role ended when I was released by the judge. So the evidence that is out there that people are talking about, it's not evidence that's been vetted by the prosecution and ruled on by a judge. So anything that you think you know about this case, may or may not be admissible evidence and therefore not to be considered by jury.
Yeah, fair enough. And I'm not questioning sort of how you made the decision at the time based on the information that you had. I guess I'm just asking you big picture the same way the LADA, right now is looking at some of this new evidence. He's looking at this new letter, for example, that you didn't see and it wasn't admitted, it wasn't found till 2018. If something like that letter had been admissible, right, the fact that Erik Menendez, 8 months before the murders, had been talking about his fear of his dad to a relative. If this other, person who talked about being abused by Jose Menendez, now that you know that, I'm not talking about in a court of law, But does that change your view at all?
I'm sorry, it feels like I might be dodging your question, but I'm not, because the real question that we were asked and that the jury needs to consider and that the law was concerned with was the moment that they went and started to shoot, were they afraid for their lives? Were they defending themselves? And the answer to that question by our verdict was no, they were not.
Because in your trial, the judge did not allow what was called imperfect self-defense, which we had talked about earlier, which was allowed in the first case. So in your case, there wasn't actually a lot of options, right? I mean, if you accept the fact that they shot them, we know that they shot them, and there is no evidence that they were sort of in imminent danger at that moment, as a technical legal matter, your verdict became not that hard.
Well, I tell you, we took it very seriously. Of course, it was hard emotionally to hear what we heard about what was going on in that family, and something that, you know, didn't go on in my family and doesn't go on in most families. So that part was hard. We thoughtfully went through the jury instructions that were given to us and reviewed the facts and asked for readbacks from testimony, and we looked at the evidence that was provided to us. So to say it was a fait accompli, that it was in the bag for the prosecution, I mean, that's what the law was, and it's been reviewed by appellate courts. And if a new court comes in and says otherwise, then that's the way it is. That's justice.
I ask you about the legal, you talk about the emotional. I ask you about the emotional, you talk about the legal. Anyway, I get it. Andrew Wolfberg, thanks a lot for taking the time. Really appreciate it.
Thank you.
My final thought on the Menendez case up next. You could tell that juror from the Menendez case wanted to defend their verdict. And I get it, because they did have limited options with regard to a verdict. So I don't think it's their fault that they came to the verdict that they did. But now we have a little bit more information. And even if it's a legal matter, you can't explain exactly how they get out now. As a moral matter, you can sympathize with them. But I would just ask you one final question. Would we apply the same standard to a lower profile case? Would we be reevaluating this case in this way if there weren't Netflix specials, etc.? I don't know. Just something to think about. Does it for us tonight. Thanks for watching. Banfield starts tonight. Thanks for watching. Go to joinnn.com to find NewsNation on your screen. And don't forget to click the red subscribe button below to get more of NewsNation's fact-driven, unbiased coverage.